Would you rather have 8 single-player or over 40 online DLCs? Most of you would choose the 8 single-player DLCs despite getting 5 times more in online updates. Perhaps because a single-player DLC would get you a better experience, a fresh new narrative, or just for the reason you're curious because GTA 5 never had any story expansions, since we all know how beloved the expansions for GTA 4 were. These single-player DLCs and a host of other cut content would have been a reality if Rockstar's plans hadn't changed. The recent source code leak, which originated from the 2022 GTA 6 hacker, showed us numerous surprises and a ton of interesting cut content, such as alternate endings to the GTA 5 story, confirming the existence of horse riding, games that never saw the light of day, and if that wasn't enough already, it confirmed the cancelled single-player DLCs and revealed many more that we would never know about until this day. The concept of a story mode DLC isn't new, as in 2014, Rockstar confirmed that at least one story mode DLC would arrive later that year, which ultimately we never heard of again. Back in 2022, when Arian Kurtage stole 90 development clips of GTA 6 and posted them online, he also somehow obtained the GTA 5 source code, which he later sold to a private party, something that Rockstar was well aware of upon the already leaked GTA 6 clips. Hence why, later that year, Rockstar seemingly removed almost all of its anti-cheat to make changes. It was long unsure what happened with the source code, and if the story of it being leaked was even true, until a year later when rumors started floating around and bits of the source code were surfacing online, since more people got a hold of it as it was being sold further to people who would directly benefit from it, such as mod makers and cheat developers. As it gets more and more sold, the risk of it getting publicly leaked increases, and so it happened. On December 24th, 2023, a 17 gig file of the source code was published online, showing us primarily the coding side of the game. 3 days later, another part of the source code was published, now including videos, images, and documents, which came around 14 gigs, totaling now at 31 gigs of leaked materials, which wasn't even all according to a rumor suggesting the full source code would be around 200 gigs. There were also talks about Arian having the GTA 6 code, but nothing had proven this to be the case, only other than mentions of Jason and Lucia in the GTA 5 source code with a small file of GTA 6, which seems to be about character animations. It further confirmed that GTA 6 was codenamed Project Americas. Other than GTA 6, mentions of unreleased games were also discovered, such as GTA Tokyo, which was rumored to be developed on the PS2, but Obe, an ex-Rockstar employee, denied it was being worked on. Perhaps the Tokyo references were just related to Midnight Club, since Tokyo was featured several times. Although a decade later, in 2016, we learned that Rockstar had serious plans and visited Tokyo to see what a GTA based in that location would look like. It made sense why they trademarked GTA Tokyo in 2003, but they later decided to scrap the idea as the road system was seen to be too complex for a GTA game, which wouldn't have been the case for another Midnight Club. A sequel to the franchise was also planned, as Midnight Club 5 mentions can be seen inside the source code leak. It's pretty clear why they didn't continue making another Midnight Club, as the market was getting saturated with other racing games, and arguably the rising popularity of GTA Online made players forget about another Midnight Club. However, what players didn't forget was Bully 2, probably the most well-known cancelled game from Rockstar. As was the case with GTA Tokyo and Midnight Club 5, mentions can also be seen for Bully 2, which isn't surprising after all the reports of the game being cancelled and shelved. One game that's for the most part still completely unknown is Rockstar's attempt at a medieval-style game. Supposedly, Meridian was the codename for it. The key takeaway here is that while there were initial concepts for creating a medieval game, none of them seemed to progress beyond the concept stage. Agent, on the other hand, was proudly announced to arrive on the PS3, and was seen as another record-breaking game from Rockstar. In the source code leak, many stuff from the Agent game was found, such as screenshots and even a map. This was going to be a James Bond-inspired game, taking place in the 70s with a French Mediterranean city, a Swiss ski resort, parts of Cairo, and even in space, according to Obe, the ex-Rockstar employee who wrote a blog about it, which he later removed as employees weren't so happy about the publication. After San Andreas, we really wanted to do something that wasn't GTA. Half of us would work on the next GTA, and the other half on Agent, which was also codenamed Jimmy, since it's the Scottish translation of James. In the end, the game wasn't seeing the progression the devs had hoped for, and everyone simply moved on as they got distracted by the next GTA. The ideas for the Agent game were later used to make a story mode DLC, which was also never released, upon a list of other DLCs that never made it to the final game. The cancelled Agent DLC, also named Agent Trevor, was previously discussed here. We already knew the DLC was cancelled, and elements from it got reused in online DLCs. Agent was also referred to as Clifford in the source code, implying again that the Doomsday Heist is probably the closest to what Agent could have been. As the name suggests, it would have been a DLC for Trevor. Aside from Trevor, a bunch of other characters were found in the source code that would have made an appearance, such as Ron, Wade, Agent 14, Jack Howitzer, and some other new characters. Next to the characters' names, a vehicle list was also found for this DLC. It showed mostly army vehicles and a drone, plus the Stromberg, which we later got in the Doomsday Heist. One vehicle we certainly never received was a spaceship, which was evidently taken from the Agent game as part of it would take place in space. In terms of weapons, we would have gotten a harpoon, crossbow, and a jetpack that we later got in Doomsday Heist with Agent 14, who, by the way, had a different appearance according to his beta dialogue icon. It's certainly interesting to read what this Agent Trevor DLC could have been, as it's one of the few that was so deep into development. HeySlickThatsMe also found an entire mission list of this DLC. It confirms the plot would focus on the Russians, Koreans, and the IAA, but it also unveiled a space mission, which would be very interesting to see how that would play out. Another game-inspired DLC was Manhunt. At some point in time, Rockstar wanted to make a Manhunt DLC for GTA 5. For those of you unfamiliar with Manhunt 1 and 2, it was a stealth-based horror game released in 2003 and 2007, where you had to perform some brutal executions, hence why it became another controversial franchise for Rockstar. Nothing more can be found about how this DLC would play out. Perhaps the only thing we have is this GTA Online Easter egg of a Manhunt mask. Another DLC that would fit in the Manhunt genre would be the Zombie DLC, which was referred to as Norman in the source code. A character list was also found, confirming the speculation that this DLC was indeed about Michael. Not only Michael was going to be involved, but also his two kids, Jimmy and Tracy, with one of the safe houses being this castle. HeySlickThatsMe also found what could have been the plot for the first mission. The start mission was linked to home, party, and cure. Maybe Michael had a party with his family, and then the zombie attack started. I guess like Undead Nightmare? Michael's wife would be infected, so Michael, Jimmy, and Tracy have to find the cure, along with doing other tasks on the way. About the Cops and Crooks DLC, which was canned again in 2020 under the codename Arc 1 or Arcade Mode 1, would have been something similar to GTA 4's Cops and Crooks. Many mentions of Cops and Crooks were found in the source code. Other than this, it would have been one of the first DLCs for GTA Online. It actually would have been a whole different part of GTA 5. Players would have been able to choose for the classic GTA Online as we know today, or the second GTA Online, which was about the Cops and Crooks arcade mode that worked entirely different than the GTA Online of today. As previously covered, players would split into teams of good and bad guys. The wanted level stars would be replaced with skulls, and the crooks could gain levels by doing criminal activities like hacking ATMs, mugging other players, and stealing vehicles. The cops, on the other hand, would gain levels by arresting the crooks, and would gain extra XP by killing or arresting the cop killers, and upon reaching the crime scenes, they could even take all the belongings from the crooks if they successfully arrested them. And it wouldn't be that easy, since there would only be 3 cops and 3 crooks displayed on the map at a time in a lobby. Cops and Crooks mode would only work if there were a minimum of 16 players, with the maximum rank you could get being 50. Some free mode missions for the cops included a police escort, bomb disposal, serve and protect, and crime scenes. There would have also been a set of new unique emotes to accommodate all these missions and events. Here's a list of animations that players could use in the Cops and Crooks mode. From pour one out to baton twirl. One thing they obviously couldn't miss was eating a donut. Upon the cut emotes, there were also cut weapons like a rubber gun, baton, fire axe, a shovel, stun grenade, flashbang, and a beanbag gun. Other weapons like the police rifle, which became the surface rifle, returned in future online DLCs. The same goes for the cut vehicles, which in the recent update made quite an appearance, but still not all the cut vehicles released, like a police version of the Bati, Caracara, Faction, and the Panto. Yes, you heard that right, a police Panto. About clothing and outfits, there was a new category in the store to browse through police hats and obviously police outfits. In the end, players could choose to start the Cops and Crooks mode directly with a new app on the phone. This Cops and Crooks DLC is certainly something interesting with all of the info that's out there. Something that isn't the case for the highly requested Liberty City DLC. Other than what we already knew and the pictures that leaked with it, it looks like this would have been a single-player DLC rather than online. Another somewhat map expansion would have been North Yankton. North Yankton would have been accessible again in a new DLC called Prologue. North Yankton was already a heavily rumored DLC, despite some saying it was simply an elaborate hoax. Something that was discovered when GTA 5 was released were cut emergency voice lines from Franklin, Michael, and Trevor talking about North Yankton.
North Yankton! North Yankton! North Yankton!
Later, an image appeared that clearly showed the bison from GTA 5 in what looks like a North Yankton setting. It's unsure what the source ever was for this image, and could have been just concept art. A North Yankton DLC would probably be the best DLC for the story of GTA 5. It could tell the stories before the prologue with Michael, Trevor, and Brad, something that could have been an interesting tale in a now empty North Yankton. Now time for some DLCs which mostly remain unknown. Army would have been, as the name suggests, a military-themed DLC, releasing in the early days of GTA Online, which was also being referred to as the Army Pendants Pack. The only leftovers from this were 9 new face paints, which, interestingly enough, we later got 9 new Army-themed face paints in the Cayo Perico DLC. Another minor DLC was Sports, also referred to as the Sports Fanatic Pack. For this, there were also new face paints, with 4 being linked to this DLC left in the game files, unused to this day. Fixes 1 and 2. No idea what they could have been other than it being an online DLC. The same goes for this second heist DLC. Intel and Surveillance, Jobs, Promoter, Relationship, and another summer DLC would also be all for online, with St. Patrick's Day and a Thanksgiving DLC. At last, there are 2 single-player DLCs which are also mostly unknown, Enterprise and Assassination. Assassination was reportedly moved to the Agent Trevor DLC, which would make sense considering the theme. In the end, 20 cut DLCs were found in the source code leak, with 8 of them being related to single-player and could be accessible through the game start menu with a DLC selection screen, similar to GTA 4's episodes from Liberty City, at least for the Norman and Agent Trevor DLC. Now that we haven't received those DLCs, we can take a look at what was cut or changed from the world of San Andreas. So was there an actual working stock market in the game, both online and story mode, in which stock prices would be affected if players, for instance, all bought the Dominator, the stock price of Vapid would go up, and vice versa if players kept destroying a particular car? This would have been a very cool feature to implement, but for reasons you can already tell, it didn't make it to the final game. Another thing that changed was the street names. It's interesting to read what some originally were called. So did this controversial name became Grove Street, Sharmuda House became the Madrazo Ranch, and Mount Chiliad was first named Mount Josiah. Something more than just street names were cut interiors. So was a second strip club planned, as well as interiors for all these buildings. In terms of what we would see on the road was also changed. Originally, there would be many more vehicles in the game with even brake discs that would glow. Here are all of the ones that were found. You can imagine what some vehicles would look like by their names, like the Sentinel 3, which would probably be the Sentinel from GTA 4. A similar transportation were horses. Yes, rideable horses in GTA 5 with even lassos. This didn't really need another confirmation, after all the content was found in the game file suggesting that we would have had horses at one point, especially since we have this horse track in the game without any horses. It would have been interesting to see how GTA would look if we had horses. The rumored reason why they were cut? Because they needed more time developing the animations and physics. Speaking of animations, there were many more found, such as brushing teeth, washing hands and face, putting on makeup, styling hair, and this one. As well as the Cops and Crooks emotes, many more were meant to be added. All of these could be played through the interaction menu, like the current actions in GTA Online. Another set of interesting animations would have been gym activities playable in GTA Online. You would have been able to do push-ups, sit-ups, and chin-ups, use the cross trainer, skipping rope, bench press, and the squat press. Who knows if this was going to be in depth like in San Andreas, or just a way to get easy RP. The developer comments and images are probably the funniest discovery of this source code leak. Some workers really had a tough time understanding the code or trying to fix it. About those images, there were some weird and cool findings, like this 8K resolution map of GTA 5, and whatever this is. Or what about this My Little Pony and Killer Bean image? Also, thanks to the dev comments, or rather notes, are the mission descriptions. Most noticeable are the endings of GTA 5. They were initially going to be different, such as Trevor freezing to death by crashing into a storage truck filled with liquid nitrogen, topped by Michael smashing him with a stick, highly likely inspired by the Terminator 2 Judgment Day. In the game files, there were actually frozen textures meant for Trevor which ended up never being used. Not only would Trevor have a different ending, but so did Michael. Originally, Michael wouldn't fall to his death, but would face his death by falling onto the blades of a police helicopter. If you go out of the cutscene with mods, you can actually see a police helicopter off camera that serves no purpose. Furthermore, confirming Michael's death would have taken a different turn. This was pretty much all the interesting cut content that was found, and there could be a million reasons why these things had been cut, from time limitations to technical restrictions, executives changing their minds, or just because it is the shittiest code in the entire game.